climb on the political ladder like so many others?
Well, I think that, we do have a lot of career politicians. That's the reason why we have term limits, and that's the reason why I felt it was very important to put on the ballot in Chula Vista back in 2006 the strengthening term limits and not allow people that are being appointed to city council positions or mayor positions or whatever to run for re-election. I mean, I think that we need that. There are term limits in the state of California. Now, the voters just approved expanding the number of years you can serve in the state legislature, and they decided to do that because the fact is, when you have constantly turnover of people all the time, you don't have people with the experience, and you don't have people that really want to do the job they're doing. They're always looking at the next job. And so, the fact is, I served my 2 terms at the city council. And I think I did a pretty darn good job. And I think I know this community. And I think I know South San Diego. And I think I'm ready to serve at the state capitol to represent the people of this community. And I think that, just like the room we're in. I mean, we had to shut down this library because we didn't have money. And one of the first things I wanted to do as soon as we started getting funds is to open this library up. I mean, and you think, well, wouldn't everybody want to? No. The city manager and 2 members of the city council voted against it. When there was an effort to raid, millions of dollars from South Chula Vista here to build a park that hopefully is going to occur one of these days, I stood up and I said, no, you're not going to steal from this part of town. You're not. And I didn't do that because I'm a career politician or want to be a politician. I did it because I deeply care about this community. And you know what? It made some of the merchants up on 3rd Avenue a little upset. But you know what? It's not the people's fault in Chula Vista and South Chula Vista that their money got taken away by the state of California. And I felt it wasn't the fair thing to do. I felt it was the right thing to do to stand up for the rights and for a community that's been neglected over the years. There are many parts of this district that have been neglected over the years, and I want to provide the same kind of leadership and the same kind of representation that I have here in Chula Vista.
Do you want me to respond? I don't know.
Would you like to? Yes.
Well, I think one of the things that Steve talked about was the change in term limits, and I think the voters were right in the sense it actually will shorten the amount of time that you could serve in the legislature, but you could serve that entire time in one house. And I think that does solve some of the problems, and we would agree with Steve that that solves some of the problems I think that you see in Sacramento. You touched also a little bit on redevelopment. Redevelopment is a situation where Sacramento did end up shutting off redevelopment, right? And it's there are a lot of problems with redevelopment that we found over the years, right? Coronado as an island is almost entirely designated as a redevelopment area. It's probably not a good use of our taxpayer money, right? We shouldn't be robbing schools to help pay for that. However, I think the problem is that was really one of the functions of term limits, is that it was sort of jammed down people's throats, and they did not have the time or the wherewithal to really fix the problem. And so, I think as far as, be careful what you wish for with career politician type term limit things, I guess, because the voters were right this last year in reforming the term limits.
And might I say, just to add what you're saying, is that when you come from a city, and that's a lot of problem that we have in Sacramento, we don't have a lot of folks that have come from, school boards or city councils or local governments. And so as a result, you have folks that really don't understand what the impacts of their decisions are. And again, the redevelopment thing was one, and I completely agree. They should have reformed redevelopment, not eliminated. But actually, that was because the cities decided to sue, and they called it wrong. But the real thing is that I think there were a lot of people that come from cities that would have a much different perspective on the impacts of that. Not only that decision, but a lot of decisions that get handed down. Look at realignment. Look what's going on with respect to our prisons. we say, well, we got to trim costs and everything. Well, California and Sacramento, I think, the way that we sort of fix our budget is we let criminals out and we raise taxes. We don't fix the problems. We create problems because, we said, well, a lot of people go, well, these are people that, 3 strikes or they're non-violent. Well, they just apprehended a gentleman in Mexico just right now that did some unspeakable things to a 10-year-old girl, what in San Bernardino or Big Bear or something, I can't recall exactly where it occurred. That individual was deemed as a nonviolent prisoner and was let go and had one of those little bracelets on that took it off and then fled to Mexico. So those aren't the ways to fix problems. Right now we've got thousands of prisoners that are being let into San Diego County. Many of them right here in Chula Vista. We don't have the police officers, we don't have the wherewithal to deal with the crime that results from that. And I think it's important when you understand when you're a local official, when you have that experience, to understand what the implications of those kinds of decisions are. So I don't, I think career politicians is a name that we throw around, but I think that somebody that serves 12 years in the state assembly or in the state senate and then goes on to their private life, I don't think that's a career politician. I think that's somebody with a little bit of experience, and if they don't do a good job, obviously they have to go to the voters and ask to be rehired. So, I think that the 12 years is probably the right way to do it. But I do believe people that have local government experience can be helpful up in the state legislature.
Do we have to?
No, go ahead.
There's so much gridlock in Sacramento right now. Do you have a plan in mind how to approach the whole scenario?
Are you asking me, or
Both
you want to take that, or?
Yeah, I'll take it. That'd be fine. One of the things, one of the reasons why Lorena enjoys really some bipartisan support in this race is because she has been able to approach a lot of problems that have been gone on for decades, right, or many years, but was able to work by reaching across the aisle to get things done. A good example is, she is the head of the San Diego Labor Council. One of the things that she is charged with is advocating for workers. But when it came to the very strong prospect that the teachers at San Diego Unified, that 1,200 of them were going to be laid off, and that our class sizes were going to balloon to about 46 students each, she had to get people in a room, and she had to say, this thing cannot pass. We cannot allow the children of our community to suffer in a way that of such larger classroom sizes. We need to get a deal done, and she was able to see that through with the teachers and the school board. With the Bayfront Master Plan, you saw an opportunity with, after years and years and years, finally Lorena, who had works for many of the stakeholders in the room, who had a brother who was suing, right, was able to finally put together a plan with the different stakeholders that were involved, with the government agency, with the community, to finally say, hey, look, it's time that we get this thing done and we start creating jobs. And when that ground breaks on the Chula Vista Bayfront plan, there's going to be 7,000 new jobs created for the South Bay. So we're really, we have, there are 3 mayors in the city, in the different cities that are in this assembly district: San Diego, National City, Chula Vista. Each one is of a different political persuasion: Republican, Democrat, and Independent, and they're all supporting Lorena.
Why?
Because, pardon me?
Why?
Because of her experience in getting those things done. Not every single one. Lorena hasn't necessarily supported every one of them when they've ran for office, clearly. But I think that she has the respect of those leaders because she's been able to really make the hard decisions in getting things done.
I think that the real issue here in Sacramento used to be gridlock, but now you've got supermajority of one party, and I'm not saying it's bad or good or anything like that. You've got a lot of things that pass, right? And maybe they should be sort of slowed down or stopped a little bit. I think that we're going to see You know, things passed that, like realignment, we just talked about that. Sort of decimating the cities with respect to taking local funding away. That happened pretty quickly. I think when you get into that capital and, you know, everybody kind of says, well, you know, we've got to operate the state and we're not going to worry about the fallout in every corner of this state, some bad things kind of happen, and we're dealing with that right now. You know, the state is not in great financial shape, and the state is, whether people want to argue it or not, we're losing jobs. You know, companies are moving. We've got to create more jobs. We've got to have investment, and we've got to have incentives so that people that have companies or that can invest want to be here and not worry about getting sued because they don't hire one sort of worker or another or anything like that. They want to come in and they want to do, or they want to open a business and they've got people out protesting and things like that. I think the other thing is that we've got you know, a situation where Proposition 30 passed, right? It was the one that went to schools, and I voted for that because I think we were all hopeful that that was, you know, that those monies were going to go to fix our schools and help our kids. That's what the governor said. That's what the controller said. That's what my opponent said, because I watched a couple of the local debates here. But what we look at, San Diego Unified, and the deal you're talking about, you know, about 60% of that money went to pay raises. And as a result, we're not hiring new teachers at San Diego Unified. You know, we're not making class sizes small. And actually, if you look at the projections, class sizes are going to get bigger. We are not saving, you know, the fiscal integrity of the school system, because San Diego Unified, if you read the reports, is selling property to pay for ongoing expenses. Well, about 3 years ago, that was illegal. You couldn't do that because it makes infinitely no sense, right? Because you sell all the property, the city of San Diego tried to do that, you run out of property, but guess what? The bills are still there. Well, you know, there was no gridlock when they wanted to pass that bill. They said, okay, let's do that. So what happens when San Diego Unified runs out of property to sell? And those bills are still there. You know, these are real problems that somebody up there has to say, wait a second, we can't do that. You know, there was a proposal to sell property, you know, in Chula Vista. One of my colleagues, who's no longer on the city council, said, well, why don't we just sell some excess property and we'll pay the bills? And I said, first of all, that doesn't make any sense, because these are recurring bills. Next year they're going to come and we're not going to have any property to sell. Plus, it's the worst time in the market. We're going to sell it, even if we can, at pennies on the dollar. So it doesn't make sense. Let's figure out how much money we have, what we need to do to be a city that provides the services that are important to its residents, and let's trim our budgets. That's what we did. You know, Cheryl Cox is not endorsing me in this race. Cheryl Cox has never endorsed me in any race that I've ever had. And I don't think that has to do whether there's respect or anything. There, you know, we have a situation where we have a political rivalry, and it's just been that way. Anybody that knows anything about Chula Vista just sort of knows that. So, you know, the thing is that I've had to basically, on many occasions, say, we're not going to do that. When we opened the third building at City Hall, you know, they wanted to pay, in the middle of the recession, Cheryl Cox and some other council members wanted to buy $2 million worth of new furniture for a building that wasn't even going to be occupied. And I asked the basic question, what'd you do with the old furniture? Well, it's in storage. Well, then why don't we use that? Luckily, a couple of my council members, you know, said that my colleagues said, yeah, why don't we do that? So we were able to basically save some money that way. So these are little things that, you know, sometimes gridlock isn't a bad thing, you know, and that's what democracy is about. And that's why I'm running, because I'm trying to provide a choice here in this election.
You know, Steve, along that same exact line, but on a state issue,
yes.
Do you think, and both of you actually, do you think the high-speed rail authority should still be a spending priority for the state of California? It's turned out to be pretty much a disaster.
You know what, the voters voted to, and I'm gonna just take this one since I let you take that last one. The voters approved, I think $9 billion in bonds for studies and so forth. But just like Proposition 30, the project that they're talking about is not what we were promised. We were promised a high-speed rail that would go from north to south and get us from San Diego or Orange County to San Francisco in a matter of minutes. That's what we were sold, and everybody went, wow, that's the future. Well, now what we've got is, and that was, I think it was $40 billion at build-out at that time. Now the latest estimates are around $75 to $85 billion for a train that they don't even have the technology figured out yet, that goes from LA through Merced. And so that's not what we voted on. And believe me, because I always want to, whenever the voters vote, whether I agree or not, believe me, I believe in democracy. I believe in the right of the people to make good decisions as well as bad. But that's not what we voted on. So, you know, my opponent in the newspaper today said, well, we should revote. I agree. Let's revote. Let's revote. But what I would say is that let's halt the spending, let's revote, and let's see what the taxpayers really want to do. And if they want to continue on knowing what we know now, you know, then I think that then we go forward, because that's just the way democracy works. But if they don't, then we need to figure out how we can spend that money, because a big project that we don't have money for right now is a water project, right? And so infrastructure is critical. And you know, the governor's talking about big pipes and all that stuff in the Delta. I don't really support that. I support a much more diversified sort of a portfolio of water projects that will allow us to have money here locally, not to bring more water in, because we do need more water, but to do conservation projects and invest in things that we need to do here locally to make sure we have enough water to sustain our economy, and not put it all in Northern California.
I'd like to have a second question. If anybody that's
Evan didn't get a chance to.
Wait, Evan, yeah, Evan didn't respond to this one yet.
I think Steve summarized our position pretty well. It was in the newspaper today on high-speed rail. If it's we're gonna change it, we should vote on it. We owe that to the voters. We would have liked to see this start in San Diego, right? San Diego to LA, instead of, you know, Merced to Bakersfield or whatever it is.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And it's not even high speed anymore, it's blended. So,
Right. Yeah, it's not gonna help. And actually, the pro formas on the cost, a plane ticket's cheaper to go to San Francisco, and a lot faster. So, you know, I mean, it's a great thing, it's a grand vision and all that, and you know, government likes to have grand visions and all that, but you know, this is a vision that doesn't look like reality, and it's very expensive, and I just, you know, I think that we should ask the voters to rethink this, and that's what I would support.
How do we start a revote? Grassroots?
Well, I think that there's some people right now that are very concerned about it. Unfortunately, you've got leadership, and again, you talk about gridlock, you've got leadership up in Sacramento that wants to just move this thing forward. They want to spend the money. And so, you know, if it's about jobs and investment and stuff, okay, well, I'm not really for building something that doesn't make sense just to create some jobs. I'm for building something, investing in something that makes sense to create jobs. And will continue to create jobs, and that's why I talked about the water project, because I think that, you know, that will help us here in this state. And again, not just bringing a lot more water down here, because that's not going to help us. What's going to help us is do everything we need to do here locally to ensure that we're not wasting water, that we're not bringing in more than we need, and that we're containing costs so that you and me and everybody else that pays a water bill can afford it and have it accessible. So I think those are the discussions that really need to be had. But you know, they built a huge bureaucracy in this high-speed rail authority. And you know, I mean, the governor, I like a lot of things he says, but I think he's wrong on this one. And I think that you know, there are people that are starting to question the wise, you know, this being wise or not, you know, and I don't know where it's going to be. But I think what you've got to have is some people in the legislature that just kind of say, look, this is not a priority for the state of California. Education and jobs are, and so I think it starts from Sacramento.
If you think, I'd like to ask a second question. If you